Greetings. Thank you for viewing this webinar. My name is Dr. Hilda Billups, and I currently serve as the chair of the Webinars Committee for TACUSPA, the Texas Association of College and University Student Personnel Administrators. You will notice we have changed the format for this webinar just a bit. This is one of our pre-recorded webinars. In these pre-recorded webinars, we seek to learn from experienced student affairs leaders. Our guest for today is Dr. Stanley DeMerritt, Vice President for Student Affairs at South Plains College. Allow me to introduce our facilitator for today's webinar. Dr. Anthony Edwards supports SACUSPA as the Director of Research and as a member of the Webinars Committee. Anthony serves as an assistant professor in the Department of Educational Leadership and Technology at Tarleton State University. Anthony's teaching assignments include higher education leadership, higher education student services, higher education finance, higher education policy and politics, higher education history, and the Comprehensive Community College. Dr. Edwards previously served as director of Tarleton Online at Tarleton State University, a professor of biology at Panola College, senior vice president of talent at the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce, and science department chair at Granbury High School. Dr. Edwards also serves as a secondary science teacher in the Fort Worth ISD and Huckabee ISD. Anthony's research agenda focuses on organizational change in higher education with respect to strategic planning, STEM education, higher education marketing, academic advising, and educational technology. Anthony has published manuscripts in the Journal of Higher Education Management and the HAPS Educator. In addition to chairing dissertation committees, Dr. Edwards supports student success as coordinator of the Higher Education Leadership Concentration of the Master of Education program in Educational Administration. We're very excited to have Dr. Edwards serve as our facilitator for this webinar and are thankful to Dr. DeMerritt for his willingness to share. I will now turn our webinar over to Dr. Edwards.
Thanks, Dr. Billups. So at this point, I will go ahead and introduce our panelist or guest speaker for today. So Dr. Stan DeMerritt currently serves as the Vice President of Student Affairs at South Plains College. And he earned his PhD in higher education from Texas Tech University in 2011. His career in higher education began in 1996 over at Wayland Baptist University. And there he served as a registration coordinator as well as a VA or Veterans Affairs certifying official. After 8 years progressing in his career, including serving as a university registrar, he was actually appointed to associate academic vice president. And then after serving Wayland for 20 years, he transitioned to South Plains College for a brief assignment as the Dean of Students in 2016 before moving to his current position in August 2017. And Stan has been actively involved in different professional organizations that not only assist with development of the profession, but also assist his institution in being on the forefront of student success. Student activities activities that he's involved in, include ACRO, which deals with admissions officers, where he served 2 terms as vice president for finance. He's also been on multiple task forces and work groups, including the most recent revision of professional competencies, as well as the association's curriculum alignment with TACRO, which is the Texas Association for the Admissions Officers, as the secretary. SAC-COC, or Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges. He served for them as an external reader for decennial reaffirmations, or those 5 and 10 year reports. And he's also served NASPA, National Student Affairs Organization, as the James E. Scott Academy Board member. He's also served as an annual conference program reviewer and as a participant in the development and review of top issues in Student Affairs Survey. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. DeMerritt.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, looking forward to it. So let's start with you telling us a little bit more about what you do there at South Plains College. Because I mean, like I said, I have the bio, but that's what's on paper, right?
Yeah, that's like skipping a rock across the water of a pond or something. You get the little splash, but you never really understand everything, I guess. for many of you who may be listening that aren't familiar with community college structure, uh, we're structured a little bit different than universities are. Typically, student affairs offices at universities deal strictly with student life, student development aspects. Whereas at the community college, we have to distill those responsibilities down a little bit. One, because we don't see, um, we only have students here for 12 to 18 months on average. If we're lucky, we get the 24-month out of them. And so we also encompass at community colleges the whole enrollment services model under that. So I have everything that deals with students outside of the academic realm. So that's from the recruitment point to graduation, advising, testing, health and wellness. I actually have emergency operations plan. I'm Title IX coordinator. I'm ADA administrator. So I've really got everything. So it's kind of daunting when you look at it, but at the same time, we're able to ensure that those services are encompassed from retention to completion. I was going to say from cradle to grave, but that's not who we are.
Well, it is life stages. We'll say that. But
Yes, it is a stage.
well, but what I'm hearing, because you have a very unique background into coming into sitting in that, VP of Student Services chair. How has that unique perspective kind of guided you? And then also, I guess what speaks to me is there also has to be sort of a skill set of leadership and management that allows you, even if you didn't necessarily do student activities, that you can come into this role and serve your staff appropriately.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's, people will say in oftentimes you talk about someone coming out of the registrar records side of the house, and you get this sense that those are just different people. Those are very introverted people. Those are very uh, rule following, not a lot of flexibility people. And I see you smiling on that because I think you know exactly what I'm saying. Very rigid people in many ways. But at the same time, as you see someone, as I saw myself progress through, you can see, okay, there's a need for rigidity when you're in a certain role, especially a uh, uh, start out preliminary lowest end of the rung type of role. But as you move up, you've got to be more fluid. You've got to be more flexible. You've got to be more understanding. And you realize that not everybody follows into that rule, and that rule has a lot of shades of gray.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of room to be flexible within that, and every situation is its own. They may be similar to others, but they're not the same. So um, we come back to some basic philosophies that I've picked up in leadership and had to adapt through that. Uh, I use so often the golden rule, and it's something that I harp on, especially at a state institution, making note that the golden rule is not founded on one faith. It's not founded on one culture. It's found almost in every culture worldwide, from ancient civilization to current time, in every faith, from all faiths. It's treat others the way you want to be treated. So are you picking up that mantle and doing things for others in such a way that benefits them while making them successful, as well as assisting you in providing the service they need? So uh, that becomes easier and easier to do, especially if you look at each one of our institutional missions of we all have seeing student success as a heart of our institutional missions and visions. I dare to ask you to find some higher education institution that doesn't have that as part of their goal, right? And so if you push that even on the lowest level of employee, that starts to make a difference, starts to make an impact from that admissions clerk, the person who is transferring credit from another institution, inputting grades and scores from whatever aspect that might be. It changes the perception. And when you can change that perception at the bottom, it's contagious. You know, there's no other word for it. And I've rambled a little bit, but I think I answered your question.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you did. I mean, because the good news in this is that this isn't a quiz, right? This isn't,
Right. No, it's
there's
not.
not a one right answer to this question. So leadership is very uh, dependent on the person in the situation, right? So,
Absolutely. And your environment.
mhm.
So, you know, I tell people this all the time. What we do in student affairs, whether it be from the more traditional enrollment services side of the house or the student development, complete interaction of well-being of the student, 99% of what we do is not life and death. What our counselors and our health services people deal with, that's life and death. But most of what we do to try to navigate the student through is not life or death. We can make a mistake as long as we're willing to go back and fix that mistake, correct it, and move on, and help the student find the resources they need and truly apologize or direct them in the right path. So the only other place that we have life or death are instructional areas such as health profession or welding, or those places where you can have a problem.
Right.
So I've always also created the philosophy, especially since I got to South Plains, was education or higher education for these young adults. We've got to create an atmosphere that allows them to learn from the mistakes that they make as they grow, and not be super penalizing to where they don't learn from those mistakes, and it becomes a point of contention where we lose them from higher education altogether. Okay, so I compare it kind of a petri dish. So we can figure out what's wrong, we can fix it before we leave them out of here after a 2-year or 18-month, and hopefully correct what might have been a poisonous situation in their own mind into something that leads them to be successful as they move on and grants them the confidence to do such.
Well, and I think student services has a unique position, a role to play in that because, like you said, obviously the advisors can help a student if they struggle in a class and maybe help them find tutoring or maybe choose a different major, or, there's other options, right, that they could take in terms of finishing a program. But also even in terms of some of the other supports that are out there, a lot of our student affairs professionals are helping students to develop the confidence and the discipline and the time management and organizational skills that they need in order to be successful both in the classroom and outside the classroom. So I think and there's the part of your job that's the, like, how does each department do their job? But then there's like also how does each department, like you said, develop students? And that is really almost a different skill set.
Right. Absolutely.
So you at one point you were a new professional and trying to figure out and navigate your way. Could you talk a little bit about some of your early uh, jobs and lessons that you learned and how that might be helpful for folks that are kind of starting out in higher ed?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Walking into my first job in the records office, registrar's office, that was I'd always run on the accuracy, ensuring that everything I did was accurate. So running into a records office role was actually pretty easy, but there was also some points at which uh, I was coming in to a situation where my supervisor was not well favored. And so there were some issues sitting there, and it made it very difficult to hear from one level of administration what was going on, and then hearing her and being caught kind of in between all of that. And at the same time, trying to manage the relationship with faculty while working through that and providing the service to students. So it's a hard navigation, but it was one where I had to take the initiative to balance both and ensure that the feeling between each of those different parties that are tugging at you from way above and right above, and then everybody you're dealing with on a surface, into balance of some way, provide positive service for that. So I think that's really where I started to mold out um, the whole golden rule philosophy as I started to lead over 20 years. Uh, then when I came over to South Plains, running into a dean of students role was a little more difficult. I had worked with all the departments at Wayland Baptist using CAS standards to try to align them with what is your profession saying and how should that guide what you do on a daily basis to ensure that you're meeting the standards, the professional qualities, core competencies of your areas, and also meet the initiatives of the college or university at the same time. So, trying to balance all that. So I'd read up on all these things, but never being really in, besides trying to get people to move forward with those initiatives, never really been on the student services side of the house. And so once I jumped into this over here, I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? But at the same time, it was rather refreshing because I was moving out of a very strict, rigid, this has to be X, this has to be Y, and it has to equal Z, to, well, X minus this plus Y minus this times this plus this divided by that equals Z. There's more nuances
Right.
related to everything to get to the same point, basically,
Yes.
right? So once I experienced that and helped South Plains even streamline some things because I had that knowledge and skill set of working policy, making policy beneficial for all parties that are involved in what policy impacts, made a big difference. So opening up again, and I'm going to say it again, to the golden rule aspect, as you write policy from the state level, even, you're bound by state regulations more than we were at the private. Good man, it just becomes natural. I don't know how else to say it. So building on one thing over years actually pays off in the end.
Mhm. That I think you're right. I think sometimes when people that are in the early stages of the journey, they can't see what's on the other side of the hill, so it's hard to know, are you doing the right thing? But
Yeah.
when
And
you
you
get
don't know
there,
till you're out there, and then
right?
you realize, oh my God, if I would have changed this one moment in time, the trajectory would have completely flipped some of the direction. But also, uh, as we go through, you've got to allow your profession to be organic,
Hmm.
and you've got to take the risk and the chance to do something different, and then realize, yeah, this is student life or student services or student affairs is so different from academic affairs, but is it? You're still dealing with the same set of people. It's just your approach is a little bit different. So the skills you learn in one are transferable to the other if you're willing to be open enough and not as rigid to handle it. So that's where I find, even on our side of the house, because I have all these people, I have the enrollment services where those people are really rigid. And then I have student affairs folks that are more, I don't want to call them fluffy, but more extroverted, more involved in the overall, they're touchy-feely, I should say. That's, I guess that's a term. It's not a clinical term, but it's we know what that means. So it's hard to cross that. And where I think we often as leaders have some issues in navigating part of that touchy-feeliness is where our senior leadership doesn't understand the differences. So, for example, when I got here, of course, our records people are not touchy-feely. You know, they some have great personalities. When you get them outside of the workplace, you're like, man, you're completely different than your interactions that I have with you on a daily basis. You know, most of them are very stoic, just very get the job done. And then you got your student service people who, or, well, let me take that back. You have your recruiters, because you can always tell a recruiter, an admissions recruiter, from a data clerk in the admissions office. Two totally different people. And you can tell them from the financial aid people, completely different. But the recruiters are more like your student life people, bouncy, bubbly, excited, let's get stuff done, right?
Right.
But that also yields to high burnout on those people at the same time. So what we see is that dichotomy between some administrators not understanding because they've only ever been in the academic realm, but then they also see just the student service folk and think that everybody that reports to student affairs should have the same personality. And they don't. It's kind of like in the same realm, most of our academic folks go up through the rank, and that's the general progression in the past to president, is being a provost or an academic VP. They and not to bash, but we all know faculty in general are so different. And arts faculty, theater, fine arts, music, they're so different than a science faculty member, right? Or even a business faculty member,
Right.
or a government political science. They're different people. And so based on personality, they're drawn to those different disciplines based on that. So how can we say that all of our student affairs people have to be bubbly and exuberant? What they need to be is focused on the vision and mission of the institution. And that's where we make a difference.
I agree. I think as leaders, you do have to recognize the differences in your team because everybody in your team is going to bring different skill sets to the table. And I think leaders are good at leveraging all of those. You did talk a little bit about leveraging skills from one area and bringing them into somewhere new. So in part of your journey, you decided you were going to get your doctorate. And you know, you're obviously probably doing well in your career. What kind of helped you decide that that was what you were going to do? And then what did you take from that experience? Because, you know, obviously, you're not doing, you know, you're not working in a lab and doing, you know, all that kind of stuff. So how do you take those skills that you got from your doctoral program and leverage those in in your work today?
Right. So pursuing to answer the first part of that, to pursue the doctoral degree was, I knew that I wasn't going to be at Wayland forever. Did I know that I wasn't going to be a registrar? No. I thought that was my ultimate path, and that's what I'm going to be until I retired. So to me, I was closing myself off.
Mm,
But as I was really active in acro at that point as well, I knew that more and more registrars were getting a terminal degree.
mm,
And in order to be competitive out there, I had to have the degree. There was no way that I'd be able to move on without it. Yeah, I could go somewhere, but would it really be a move up? And we're always progress. We always naturally want to gain a step as we move, even though it may be a lateral. But is there a little more responsibility, a little more, uh, I guess, self-fulfillment as you move on, thinking that you're making some contribution to that institution or the profession as you go. So as I did that, I was through my first semester, and then the associate AVP position came up, and then it became my contract. I had a 5-year contract that I would complete my doctoral degree, didn't matter in what, within 5 years of signing that contract.
mm.
So it took me 6 years to go through because I never do anything on the short path for some reason as far as education. My undergraduate, I crammed 4 years into 8. So, and 5 of that was just doing an associate. So
Mm.
um, that tells you
Well,
anything.
but I think that gives you compassion for the students you serve, right? Because
Yeah,
they're not all on the straight path.
exactly. And you don't have to be, because it's not about competing with anybody else but yourself. And that's what a lot of students kind of fear, because they come out of high school thinking, well, I'm being judged against who my colleagues were in high school and grade grubbers and all that. It's like, dude, figure out what it is. It's about you, and where do you want to be at the end, and how does that path influence who you are as you get there. So if I would have done the whole thing over, I would have started out a lot earlier on my doctorate. I'd finished my master's in 98, and I crammed that into 3 years. But of course, the institution paid for so much of it. So I took 6 hours a term, so it had to be spread out. But I should have started immediately. And if I would have started immediately, I wouldn't have lost that time with the children,
Mm.
because they were middle school and going into high school at that point. And so I kick myself for doing that. But at the same time, I can't look at what happened. I have to look at where are we at now with our relationship with our family, and where am I at professionally from that.
Right.
So
Now that makes sense. We can't go back. All we have is today. So we got to figure out what we can do today. Um, Now you've transitioned from a university um, to a community college, and there's if you think about kind of where the national conversation is around higher ed, there seems to be a renewed buzz or interest in community and technical colleges and what they offer. Um, Obviously none of us knows what the future holds, but from where you sit, um, where where do community colleges fit in the mix, and what is the unique role that they play?
yeah, that is a very heavy question, Anthony. As we see so many things change, we've seen the last federal legislative session approve use of Pell Grant for workforce development and continuing education, which is fantastic. Those were things that have been needed for decades, and I believe that was actually a major win out of that legislation. And both sides of the both sides of the House and the Senate will agree with that concept right there. So that's a plus, and that's a plus for higher education in general. So not just community colleges. Uh, Being at a community college, we're continually trying to change the terminology of our communities, of people saying, you've got to go to college, you've got to go to college, when people don't understand community colleges and trade schools in many ways. Most of us are hand in hand because we are that.
Mhm.
We offer career technical education programs, welding, auto mechanics, diesel mechanics. I met wind energy, all those things that people would say, oh, you need to go to a technical college for that. It's college. You know, what do we offer? We offer all the same things. So it's not a separate, you know, we're not preparing. We are preparing you to go if you desire to go to a 4-year transfer, but it's all the same. So we're changing the dynamic of what that terminology is. Can everybody go to college? Absolutely. And it's for what your career choice may be, whether it be technical education, arts and sciences, or health professions. So we're changing that. Number 3 on this whole thing is dual credit is huge. And we saw that through the 88th legislation through financial aid for student
With
transfer,
transfer, yeah,
the
FAST
FAFSA
program.
program,
Hmm.
and moving that direction. And we've all seen significant increases in dual credit enrollment, which actually is changing the dynamic of our institutions at the
Hmm.
same time. So what is that doing? That's actually flipping what we've done in the past. And now we have to be prepared for how to accommodate those enrollments on the backside. Those impacts are going to steadily have major ramifications on our institutions related to enrollment. We talk about the enrollment cliff that hit, we're right on the start of, and then we're going to see another one hit in another decade, another 10 years. And what does that look like? For us, if the dual credit thing continues to grow, and it's not just growing on the arts and science side, it's also growing on the professional technical education side, the P-TECH programs,
Right.
technical education. This could be a different environment. We could be a completely leaner ship because our enrollments are happening pre-high school graduation versus what we're accustomed to, 18-year-olds coming on campus. That's going to have a massive impact on what we do in our housing, on our student activities, and other realms, and how we provide some of our services that get intermingled with K-12 services, such as counseling services. Where do those responsibilities happen? And we can't put a counselor at every high school because, you know, high school counselors aren't necessarily counselors, they're
Right.
skill builders. They're completion transfer credit evaluators, you know, all that jazz. So the whole thing is going to change the dynamic, I think. And I don't have a crystal ball. All we can do is adapt and change as each term comes. What do we see? Where do we need to put the people in order to make sure that the services are being provided or the classes are being taught? So,
Right. And I know at the community college level, you have on that one extreme, you've got the dual credit students, and then sort of in the middle, you've got your traditional age students who are coming there. You know, maybe they want to transfer, maybe they don't. But then on the other end, you've got this larger extreme of older, technically adult students that might be upskilling, reskilling, you know, these are all these different terms that are out there. From a student services standpoint, how do you support adult students?
that's the hard part. You basically have to support them with the health and wellness side of it because, you know, they're not, and I can tell you right now, they're not interested in student life. They don't have time. They're working or they're trying to find a new job and they've got a family to feed.
Mm-hmm.
They're occupied already with potentially their religious life, their church life, other social life. They don't have time to come up to the campus to participate in a mocktail madness event. You know, that's not even on their radar. However, they do want a club or organization related to their field that may
Mm.
benefit. So law enforcement, they want a law enforcement to where they can connect with other people and create a network, something that's going to help them find that next job or profession. So it's trying to find that balance, and we do get that request from those 20 somethings. Where's our student life? Where's our activities? And then you go out there and try to offer it, and then they never show up because they don't realize how busy their own lives are.
Mm-hmm.
Once they've gotten to that level, that it's like, man, I can't do that. That's conflicting with something else that I've already got going on in my life. So it becomes harder to do that. However, we do see them using our counseling service. We do see them using our health and wellness, or our health, student health services. We do see them using food pantry or request for emergency aid. So the goal is, how do you wrap around a service to ensure that they're getting what they need when they need it, not necessarily us forcing a service on them. So changing a philosophy of how you do advising. So instead of doing a mandatory, you've got to come in and sit here and wait in a queue to see an advisor and waste 5 hours of your day to do that during early registration. No, we set up a calendar, a schedule, put an appointment. You schedule when you're free, and you can do an online appointment with an advisor. No more of this making you come face to face. We can have you pre-plan your schedule, send it to the advisor, have them check it. They can send it back to you in an email or communication through our system to say, yeah, this looks great. Have you thought about X, Y, Z? You know what I mean? Looking at meeting the student where the student is versus making the student come to us to get it.
Makes sense. In this environment, how do you keep your staff motivated?
Well, there's all kinds of ways to do that, and most of it is when they see that their hard work has paid off through increased enrollment numbers. And that's the crazy thing, is many of us say, well, enrollment's up, but you're not doing anything for me. When we communicate on a regular basis that our enrollment is up, and this is because of the work you have done to help create that. So given the kudos where they belong. Yeah, those only go so far, but also the sequential raises that we give to our employees, the time off that we give to our employees. South Plains College does something that not a lot of institutions do anymore. Being a state institution, you understand this, Anthony, in the fact that the university probably pays for your health insurance because the state pays half, the institution probably pays the other half just for you. But if you have a family or dependents, you're probably responsible for paying their premiums, right?
Right.
That's not what happens here. South Plains College pays the full premium for healthcare for you and your dependents.
Wow.
So they know, and we don't dangle that over them to say, hey, you better do a good job, you're going to lose this. No, it's just part of who we are as a culture. So they know that we care enough about them to pay their entire premium. That's a huge benefit. So when they see that, and many of them who have families now understand that, they stay and they see they care about me. We do things, we're progressive, we move forward with initiatives. We give credit when an initiative is thought about from one of our lower level employees. And so when you give kudos, that goes a long way, especially giving credit where credit is due. And so the motivation, I think there could be some other means, but you also don't want to open up a Pandora's box that you can't sustain either.
Right.
We also have hired over the past 8 years directors that understand through their departments. And I think this is what is important too, Anthony, is mediocrity is not acceptable, period, at any level. And when you set that high expectation and they understand that, it becomes easier to lead, because even our directors and our deans in student affairs know we will move forward at this level of expectation, and it needs to meet or exceed what the national standard is. And if we can do that, oftentimes those type of initiatives lead to a positive atmosphere, because you want to be there. You want to see that success as an individual, right? That's our human nature. And so by doing that, we see the motivation come through. And most of that involves everybody in the unit.
Yeah, and I think part of it, what you're also saying is leadership, a lot of it is about culture building. And so you're, by creating the benefits package, that instills a value in the culture of how you feel about your employees. When you say, hey, we want excellence, and we expect excellence and we reward excellence, that's also an element of culture. And so people know, okay, and people can kind of self-select, is this the kind of organization I want to be a part of? And it's going to attract people for whom that's their natural way of doing things, right? And so you're going to end up with a community of excellent people who want to work together. And so that makes a lot of sense. In terms of your career, is there maybe any tidbits that you've learned from a mentor or previous leader that have stood out to you?
Oh, any. You got another 5 hours.
Well, if you can give me a couple,
Oh
that
my
would be great.
gosh. One, flexibility. And I've always had that, especially when I got here, is flexibility. When I got here, our president had just been at the institution 2 years. He had just started his first year as president. He was president for 4 months when I started. So there was a lot of culture change that was starting at that point. And so it was, how do we be flexible with those who aren't on board, with those who are on board, and make a collaborative effort happen. So when COVID hit, I found a saying decades ago called Semper Gumby, always flexible. And actually, someone had created one that was like a Harry Potter looking thing. It was so academic looking, and it had Gumby in a cap and gown with a tam on, and it had looked like a college seal that said Semper Gumby. And so when COVID happened, I plastered that on the wall, on the window of our office. I was like, we're going to be flexible, and we're going to do what we need to do. So that holds up to so many different areas. The patience and grace was another thing. I think that goes along with flexibility. We can agree to disagree, but we have to have patience with each other in order to come to a collaborative agreement. And I think our society has thrown that out the window in many ways. And we don't give each other enough grace to fix something if we did something wrong, or enough grace to understand where someone might be coming from. And again, that's patience, but patience and grace kind of weave together at the same time. You can't have grace unless you have patience. So those are the two big things. The other thing is No is only the start of the conversation. And I have to leave that there. And then the last one, silence is golden, but duct tape is silver. That's all I got.
So, wow, how am I going to follow that? So, what I will ask you though is, are there any books or podcasts that have stood out to you over the years?
So I'm not call me old school. Um, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a 8 block ride home, so I'm not in the vehicle long enough. Number two, I can't focus while listening to someone in my ear and do another task.
Mm-hmm.
So I had an admin assistant that used to be able to listen to podcasts all day long and do her job. And I'm like, how do you not make a mistake or write what they're saying? I don't get that. So I can't really listen to
Right.
podcasts. Uh, I will listen. I will, if I get tired, I'll put some journal article or something on
Mm-hmm.
read speak and listen to it. And I can do that if my eyes are tired. But books, I've done a lot of reading, and I've actually helped several people through many of the Ken Blanchard leadership series. He's got some really sound things that have actually been taken from uh, some very historic management leadership lines, and some of his stuff is very faith centric.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that I've used multiple times with people that I've had that I know that are
Mm-hmm.
of people of faith, of Christian faith, even here. And I said, I'm not forcing this on you, but I'd like to work through this with you. And it helps them see a bigger picture
Mm-hmm.
and has helped them really come into the understanding of what true leadership can mean. But Kim Blanchard has some great stuff. I've been actively involved with Boy Scouts of America, now Scouting USA, and I've since departed from that, not because of any ideology, but my kids grew up and it was getting too busy in other things. It's time to let the younger people take the mantle. So I was involved in some massive adult leader trainings that took a lot of leadership pieces to that, stages of team development, how to build high performing teams, that type of stuff. So Ken Blanchard actually had influence on the curriculum for BSA back in the early 2000s on some of that. But so I've got his books on that I continually pick up and read and use the models that he shows to people. And when it's crazy, I show them stages of team development. They're like, that's why that happens. Well, this is what that is. Like, dude, this has been around for decades now.
Right.
So it's fun to read through some of that stuff. One of the last books I read was the story of Netflix. And I can't remember the name of it. I just saw it this morning. It was like they told me it would never work, you know? And again, that's a story of leading through change and constant change, because that dude, he started out with sending out DVDs in the mail, and then it turned into streaming services. So he was on the cutting edge of that. And now everybody's followed his platform. So they said it would never work, I think is what the title of that book was. So that's kind of where I've landed on some of that. I've got a stack of books that I have not even gotten through at home, like I think many of us do.
Of course.
I go through every few months and reprioritize on what it is, and then I pick it out and read it. So it's so time consuming with everything that we're doing at this point in the disruptions in higher ed. But I would encourage picking up Ken, because he does a lot of good stuff from a solid perspective. I know there's a lot of other good people out there. If you're looking for generalized leadership, I think most of that is very applicable to higher ed.
Yeah, I think he provides a great foundation. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff out there, but like you said, a lot of it builds on things that he put out there. So, whether it's 1 Minute Manager or, any of these other books, it's just, yeah, you
Yeah,
can't go wrong there.
and I read 1 Minute Manager whenever I was an undergraduate
Right.
management class, and some of those concepts are treating people as people.
Yes,
Everybody's got a story behind them, and you don't have to know the story, but you have to know that their story impacts how they perform on a daily basis.
correct.
So that comes back to those other aspects. Now, uh, one thing I do read on a regular basis, and I do this as kind of a self-help more than anything. Uh, I've been out there, and one of my directors turned me back onto the Myers-Briggs thing.
Mm,
I'd never really taken the full one because I'd done some other things very similar, but really kind of off from that. Um, so I did that about 3 years ago and really found out who I was on Myers-Briggs. So now I subscribe to the 16 personalities
mm,
email, which is Myers-Briggs is 16 personalities, but they actually come back out with my profile and tell me these are the things and characteristics, and I'm like, are you people doing weird things? Because you just hit me spot on.
right.
Every week I'm getting this stuff. I'm an INFJ,
Mm,
and so that's classified as the advocate. And so then I find out, okay, I've probably been an I. You usually don't change much from
hmm.
what that is. You've always been that. So then I'm going back and looking at who I was and who I am today. And I find that different instances have influenced certain aspects of those to come to reality at different times.
Hmm.
Now I get these reports that I read, and I do the journaling and all this now with it, of how to be a better person based on understanding who I am through Myers-Briggs. So that's where I've been landing lately.
Well, like I said, between Kim Blanchard and Myers-Briggs, you really can't go wrong there. So I
Um,
think you'll get good information. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I think I could probably talk with you all day and still come up with more questions to ask you. Hopefully, one day we can grab a cup of coffee in person. Uh,
Absolutely. I was about to say, yeah, we just need to sit down one day and
yes.
hash it out. Your profile on what you teach in higher ed. Like, dude, you teach everything. Are you a faculty member of one? Yeah.
It is interesting. Yeah, it's like what day, what am I teaching? And so I have to switch hats, so but it's fun. It's good stuff.
Good.
But some of the things that I got out of today's talk, the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated. Um, you know, Flexibility, grace, and patience. Let your career be organic and be willing to take some risks in your career. Bridging the gap between divisions of the campus. No is only the start of the conversation. Respeak is a tool if you want to listen to different articles and such. Ken Blanchard, is good. Yeah, a lot of good leadership books. You also mentioned Scouting USA, and I think what I got out of that was sometimes we think we have to read a book to become a better leader, and sometimes really you just need to get out and serve. And some of the organizations that have been serving for a long time are actually great leadership factories or academies, and so you can learn a lot of great lessons by being a part of these groups that serve. Um, they said it would never work. Another good book about leading through change, and the 16 personalities email from Myers-Briggs. So, again, thank you so much for being a part of this discussion and pouring into the next generation of student affairs leaders.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you so much. And with that, we're going to turn it back over to Dr. Billups.
Thank you for viewing this webinar. We'd like to thank Dr. DeMerritt again for sharing with us. Please check our YouTube channel for more webinars like this one, as well as our other webinar types. If you missed a webinar this year, we invite you to watch the recording. If you're interested in presenting, serving as a panelist for a future webinar Wednesday, or participating in a pre-recorded webinar, please consider completing the proposal form. The link will be included in the description for this video. Finally, the TECUSPA membership year runs from January to December. If you're not yet a member of TECUSPA, we encourage you to join us. Thank you, and we hope you have a great day.